We are just about 2 weeks out from the 2026 NFL draft. We've run through our 28 rookie profiles for this season, in-depth breakdown of some of the biggest names in the class. But John, this episode is so important. We're calling it our wide receiver sleepers episode, but really what it is, it's mini rookie profiles of the next 14 wide receivers we weren't able to get into the rookie profiles. There's so many good players. So many folks watching have commented, in the Discord, folks have given us names they want us to break down. The big value, the big advantage of following the rookie big board is that we are going so in depth, John, right? We are ahead of the consensus industry. I've watched 87 players. I've watched 40 wide receivers in this class. We're not even going to hit every wide receiver that I've broken down the tape on, but we have 14 big ones. All of these guys legitimately could affect the way that your rookie drafts go. So with that being said, John, we got a lot of guys to get into. We're going to jump right into it. But the last thing I'll say to start us off, folks, if you learn even one new thing from this episode, please go ahead, give the video a like. And if you want more in-depth knowledge, personalized advice, links in the episode description, patreon.com/rookiebigboard. Now is the time, folks, to get ahead of your league mates and support all of the work me and John are doing. So let's get into it here. Our first wide receiver is Jakobi Lane. This is somebody, John, I really loved at the beginning of the process. The yellow flags have kind of added up, but I really can't shake the guy. He has excellent athleticism. I love his vertical ability. He pairs that with a really nice long frame. You're going to put him along the boundary, right? This is the guy that's going to stick along the boundary. He's going to live along the boundary. 6'4", 200. He's fast. He's physical. Here's my big challenge, though, with him. Concentration drops. 64% catch rate. That's not the worst thing in the world for a boundary type guy, but his drop rate is about 8. I believe it's 8.5%. And they're bad drops. They're concentration drops, right? He went to the Senior Bowl. I heard not so great feedback from the ground as to, how he did interview wise. I initially thought he had the talent to be a first round NFL draft pick. Now I think he's going to be a round 3 guy, right? Now that's still good draft capital. And, this is a class, John, where, you might be able to get him at a value. As we're recording this, his sleeper ADP puts him late second round, 211. I think there's some value in that. He's not a perfect prospect, right? But as I'm approaching the late second round of my rookie drafts, where I'm looking for value, John, I'm looking for some upside, right? I want to take a swing, and I want to know that if I hit, I'm going to be able to hit big on it. For me, Jakobi Lane, he's a guy who you could project for 6-7 touchdowns in the right landing spot. And maybe he catches 60% of 80 targets, late second round. I'm interested. I want a little bit of exposure to him. I know the red flags. I know some folks are going to be out, but I just can't quit him.
I like Jakobi Lane. I would prefer him in the 3rd round. I'm a little bit lower on our rankings than you are. But here's a player that I find fascinating, Chris Bell. If we rewound this, and we were talking last December, there were people and experts in DraftNix who really love Chris Bell, and some people I've seen still have him in the top 10. Matt and I are both a little bit lower. I thought I was lower until I looked at Matt ranking, and he's got him 17, and I have him 14. I'll look at some of the positive. He did have 14.3 yards per reception. I do like that very much. And he had a 34% dominator rating. So those are 2 very interesting stats in my wide receiver model that I like a lot. Obviously, when you watch the tape of Chris Bell, you can't not notice his size. 6'2", 122 pounds. He does play like a big man. However, when I put him into some of the more advanced metrics I like receiving yards per team pass attempt, and I put him in the PFF ADOT, Matt, that's where he kind of has a little bit yellow flags. We've been calling them yellow flags all this offseason. I don't really love it at 2.33 for the receiving yards per team pass attempt, and 9.4 ADOT is not very good for an X who looks like an X receiver on the boundary, I would have hoped that his ADOT was greater than that. Also, you wrote it great in your tape analysis, Matt. I think he has an extremely limited route tree.
Yeah.
You're not getting a player that's going to come into the NFL and can decorate the field with all these advanced routes. I'm also concerned about the injury, even though we are getting more positive reports. If people don't know, he got injured late at the season at Louisville, but the reports are positive right now. I kind of thought a month ago he'd have a redshirt season. Maybe he gets onto the field later in 2026 than I expected. Matt, what do you have to say about Chris Bell?
Yeah, John, again, I like the talent. The thing about Chris Bell, and I'm stuck here, and if you're going to drop a comment and let us know you still want to draft him, I hear you. I get it. I see the upside. I see the appeal. I understand the idea of buying low, but what you have to understand is realistically, you're not going to get the type of fantasy production that you want to get from him when you watch his tape, right? This idea that you have in your head, even as flex level production, it's not realistic to expect him to do that year one as a rookie. So you're going to have to let his value drop before it goes up. And that's just not the way that I like to approach my rookie drafts, right? I want to invest in players who I think are going to have value rise, and Bell may get there, but there's so many might, could, projection. It's tough. I hate to say it because I like the player. All right. I like this player a decent amount too, but we don't like him quite as much as ADP, John. And that's Barion Brown out of LSU. And we're Devy guys. We remember his freshman season at Kentucky. All right, folks. We were there too. He's quick. He's fluid. He's versatile. He's explosive. He's going to be a special teams guy week one. Absolutely. That being said, I do think he's a little bit more than a special teams guy. I think he's got good hands. I like his ability to win in traffic, but we're looking at a guy with high manufactured production at the college level. 2 different teams, John. Manufactured target in 2 different teams. And yes, I'm with everyone who loves Barion Brown. You can explain away 3 years of bad Kentucky quarterback play, and he went to LSU, and that was a mess too. And I understand, but at the end of the day, right, what we have for tape is a limited route tree. It's a lot of short stuff, not something that I can confidently project, a high yards per reception with, right? 175 career receptions, I think relative to his offenses, that's actually pretty good. 64% catch rate. I actually would like to see that higher. 64% catch rate for a guy with such a low ADOT. That's pretty weird.
And in the slot, you'd like to see better hands.
Yeah, so I think he's going to be a day 3 early guy. I think he has a role in an NFL team. I would like him on my NFL team. I really would. I like Barion Brown. I think he's round 4, round 5. His current ADP, though, John, on Sleeper, 303. Ooh. The value's not there. I've got him ranked wide receiver 25. You've got him ranked wide receiver 31. And that is certainly higher, or certainly lower, I should say, than where his ADP is. So for me, he's a fade. I think we're still riding out a big name and, a big piece of Devy. And sometimes it surprises folks, John, as big Devy analysts, a big piece of the game is knowing when to not hold on to the name value, right? Or not hold on to 3 years ago. And with Barion Brown, I think that ADP is still clinging on some of the reputation that's preceded him.
I completely agree with you. And Matt, there's flashes of speed and people can be tantalized by it. But when I graded him and ranked him, I'm thinking about ceiling. I think he's a special teams player. Yeah. I think he's your 4th receiver on the roster. So that's why I'm pretty low on him. I don't ever see him with 100 receptions. But now here's a player who we're going to talk about, Malachi Fields. Wow, Matt. Before the Senior Bowl, he was getting so much national press. I mean, there were big, high-end national media members who were waxing poetically about Malachi Fields. And you and I had him on our Senior Bowl preview show. And there are still things I like on tape about him. However, he went to the Combine, Matt, went to the Senior Bowl. I think he lowered his draft stock, right? It just isn't where it was maybe late December. We have him at wide receiver. Matt, you have him at 20. I have him at 18. I do think I have him a little higher. I'd say that's in the same tier for both of us. But I could see an NFL team really liking this big player. You put him out on the X. He's 6'4", 218 pounds. Someone's got to run those cardio, get those safeties out of the, deep in the defense. So I could see them liking Malachi Fields and having a role. I just don't think the ceiling is there for him as an X receiver. And if he can't bully people with this size, and at the NFL level, that's a lot harder to do than it is in college. I wonder what his ceiling is, Matt. I don't think it's there. I don't think he's ever going to be a 100-target wide receiver. I do like some of the analysis when you look at my model. 15 yards per reception, 29% aerial dominator, 16.4 PFF ADOT. So there are things to like. There are times on tape I like them. But, Matt, I know you like separation, and Malachi Fields does not have it.
Yeah, there's going to be a trend for me. Whenever, we're talking about these wide receivers that I'm lower than consensus on, very often it's guys who can't separate. Because like you mentioned, we have just seen, it's proven, right? These guys who don't separate at the college level, they're not going to separate at the NFL level. Fields has a little bit of wiggle room because he's so big, he can get away with it. We talked about guys who are like 6'1.5", 6'2", and can't separate. So at least Fields has the frame, and that might buy him a little bit, maybe a little like Jonathan Mingo type career projection, or, maybe on the higher end, like Dontavian Wicks. I think that's what that's probably the high end range of outcomes. And for me, with Malachi Fields, it's not enough to get excited about when there's so many other good options. That's the key, right? There's so many other exciting guys in this class. And, one of them is Josh Cameron, and you're a little bit more excited than me, John. I've got him at wide receiver 24. You've got him at 19, but he's a really fun tape watch. I got to tell you, dude, like,
I love the tape, Matt.
Yeah, he's got juice, dude. Like, he has juice. He accelerates off the snap. I mean, it was a real bummer he didn't do anything at the combine, because
real bummer.
You watch his tape, the acceleration is off the charts. He is just wicked explosive, dude. Excellent catch and turn ability, elusive after the catch. He's scrappy after the catch. So he's elusive and he's physical. My thing, though, John, he struggles to separate. And, he doesn't quite have the frame to, compensate there. 6'1", 220. So he's not small. My thing with Cameron, it's not just a struggles to separate, because he does play over the middle of the field. Positioning becomes even more important. And I see him, he lets Big 12 defenders jump his routes too often. And listen, man, we watch a lot of college football. Big 12 defenders are not the ones you want to let jump your routes, right?
No.
Like these are undersized. These are guys that generally have lower ball skills compared to, if you're talking about a Big 10 defensive back or SEC defensive back, right? So, Josh Cameron, for me, I know he's explosive and he can create space, but, if you create that space and then let the defensive back get in front of it, then it's all for nothing, right? And I saw that too often on tape, and that's why he's a little bit lower in my film review. But, I mean, like I said, it's electric, 13.2 yards per reception. That's a super exciting number. 65% catch rate. That's pretty good there. He certainly was the heartbeat of that Baylor passing game this year. And the other thing to keep in mind with Baylor, and we talked about this with Chris Brazell, right, at Tennessee, but Baylor also runs a version of the veer and shoot, a little bit pretty spread out still, actually, especially with Sawyer Robertson there, right? So a decent amount of that as well, scheme-wise. I will say, right now, you could get him at 410. He's a late-round flyer. I think it fits. I think that fits the bill. If you want to take a shot on Josh Cameron, late 4th round, 410, 411, a lot of our viewers and listeners, John, they're playing in 5-6 round leagues. Maybe you have 60, 72 picks in that draft. Josh Cameron's absolutely in play.
Yeah, and what's interesting, when I'm watching the Baylor tape this year on Josh Cameron, and he's fallen down my rankings over the last month and a half, 2 months. And it's a red flag that he didn't compete at the combine. That kind of concerns me about his athleticism. I did think Baylor, for a big receiver, Matt, I felt like the offense gave him manufactured touches.
Oh yeah. Oh, big time. Big time.
Yeah, and you don't usually see
Right.
that with these big receivers, right? So there's 2 red flags. That's why I moved them down. I still think there's utility. Now, here's a player that Matt and I totally disagree on, and this
here's your guy.
right? This is my guy. I have him at 16 at wide receiver. Matt has him at 34. My friends, I don't think you have to draft him as a 16th receiver off the board. If he falls to like Matt's ranking, somewhere's around 30, I think you're getting a bargain. So I think right now there's a wide discrepancy, and Eric McAlister is not being spoken enough about, in my opinion. If you don't know him, he comes from Boise originally, and I really liked him at Boise State. I thought he popped very well. He ends up leaving early one year. He kind of leaves the team early November, which is weird. And then he pops up at TCU. He's 6'4", 194. And I understand the history of TCU wide receivers is not very good transitioning to the NFL. However, when I broke down the tape, in my opinion, I think McAlister is a little bit different than your typical TCU wide receiver prospect. I think he's got more juice. I think he's a better route runner. I also think he's able to avoid tackles at a much higher rate. But when I plugged him into my model map, my model really likes him. 18.2 yards per reception.
Yeah, that's good.
He had 32% aerial dominator. Those are significant stats in my book. He even has receiving yards per team pass attempt that I like, 2.59. He exceeds the benchmark of 2.50. I understand that he's not a perfect prospect. That's why I have him at 16. But I see a ceiling that can be very enticing if he continues to grow. Matt, I know you're lower on him, so why don't you tell the viewers why you're lower on him than I am?
Yeah, I know. I think for me, right, I told you there was going to be a trend here. I think he lets defensive backs jump his routes as well. I do think he's got physical hands. He's got strong hands. He wins late into the catch point. I just don't love when my wide receivers rely on that, right? Yes. Now, the other thing about this, right, that looks bad. Oh, wide receiver 34, like Matt absolutely hates him. Folks, wide receiver 24 to 36, like it is closer than you think right now. You know what I mean?
They're very close, yeah. Matt.
And
oh my God, I move guys around and you're like, come on.
and you know, like it was hard even picking the 14 guys to do for this episode, right? Because we're only, I think with wide receivers, we're still only going to get up to, you know, maybe a little over 20 of them, 2025. And, you know, there's good players we left off this list because, you know, Eric McAlister, for instance, you know, wouldn't have been on my 14 guys, but he's on yours. So, you know, all that to say, there's some really good players that I just like more than McAlister. It's not that I dislike, you know, it's not that I hate Eric McAlister. But speaking of which, this is a guy that I am definitely high on. I thought mainstream consensus would catch up on Kevin Coleman at this point, John. I really haven't heard anybody else talking about him. And I think it's probably the size, but I'm perfectly fine with it. I've got him at wide receiver 18. You've got him at wide receiver 22. He's 5'10", 179. He's coming out of Mizzou. In terms of his tape, dude, it's good. Fast off the snap, burns downfield. I mean, he burns downfield. He's fluid. He's got a bit of an underdeveloped route tree, right? I think part of that is that he played at Jackson State. They're not gonna really make him coach up, right? His athleticism is gonna get it done on his own. That's as a true freshman. Then he goes to Louisville. Then he goes to Mississippi State. Then he goes to Mizzou. He played in four different offenses, John, in 5 years, right? And so he was constantly learning new offenses. I think if he stayed in one place, we would have seen a bit more of a route tree. That being said, works a good slant, nice curl route. I think he can really live playing off the seam at the next level. I think you can move him around. He's probably primarily going to be in the slot, but I do think you can move him outside at times, spread out the defense a little bit. He wins deep, so he's a little bit of a deep field specialist there. He wins very nice vertically for his size. So I mentioned, you know, he's listed at 5'10". I think he goes up and gets the ball at times closer to 6'0", 6'0 and a half. So there's some really nice athleticism there with Kevin Coleman. Accelerates well, 77% catch rate. Woof. That's a good number, man.
That's a nice number. Really nice.
And 29% aerial dominator, like that's a good number. 40-yard dash time, 4.49, like that checks a lot of boxes. I'm not saying he's going to be a day 2 guy, and I understand in this class he's going to get overshadowed, right? But that's where we find value. I think he's going to be maybe a round 5 NFL guy. John, we found round 5 guys that we do very well with in the past, right? Oh, yeah. Outside the top 48, he is not in sleeper ADP. So if we're talking like, again, I'm going to be taking shots on him in the back end of the 4th round. I'm going to have really heavy exposure, John, because I do play in a lot of leagues that will go past 48 picks. And in those leagues, I'm going to be scooping him up all day, round 5, might even get him round 6. So I do think his ADP is going to jump a little bit post-draft because I think the name will get out there a little bit more. But, Kevin Coleman, I mean, I love him. I'm really high on him.
I've grown to like Kevin Coleman, and I prefer him over Barion Brown, who we talked about earlier today. I actually prefer him over Brennan Thompson out of Mississippi State.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. I have him and Deion Burks right next to each other.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But I would say based on ADP, I would prefer to having Kevin Coleman than Deion Burks. That's just me. But now my favorite. I do like McAlister a lot. But my personal favorite of all the sleepers in the draft is I like Jeff Caldwell a lot. Now, Matt and I disagree, but not as wide as we do on Eric McAlister. I have Caldwell at 21. Matt has him at 29. I think my ranking is based upon projection, Matt. The young man came from Lindenwood University. He moved up finally to the Power 4 last year at Cincinnati. He had a good season, not spectacular, but he did get honorable mention all Big 12. But Matt, at the combine, I know athleticism isn't everything. I completely understand that. But when you are 6'5", 216 pounds, and you're running a 4.31, that athleticism is off the charts. He has an ADOT of 15.0 by PFF. He has a 53% catch rate, but Matt, he's not running those dinks and dunks screen passes. This man is running deep down the field. I actually watched some of his tape at Lindenwood. There's still growth in this young man. He's a developmental prospect. Draft capital and landing spot is going to tell us everything about Caldwell. If he can make it into the 5th round, 7th round, I'll be a little bit more worrisome, or, one of those, what do they call them, supplemental picks late in the draft. If he gets into the 5th round on a team in which I believe can develop wide receivers, like what we used to see with the Pittsburgh Steelers, if he gets good draft capital in the right organization, he might need a year or 2 to grow, but I'm ranking him based on potential down the road and growth, but I see glimpses of an NFL X receiver here.
Yeah, again, not a guy that I'm out on. I definitely see the upside. I think it's a big upside projection. Just some guys that I like a little bit more than him, and one of those guys, John, is Reggie Virgil. Yeah. So here's the flip side, right? So I've got Reggie Virgil up at wide receiver 16. John's got him down there at wide receiver 28. And by the way, I really love showing the wide receiver ranking contrast here. So folks know, we're showing 2 sides, right, of all these prospects, or 2 opinions, I should say, on all these prospects. What do I like about him? The tape is excellent. In my opinion, I think he is one of the most underrated guys. We watched him for the Senior Bowl, and I really have not been able to kick him since. Great ball tracking. I love his ball tracking. Really instinctual, natural ball catcher. It's just reliable hands, man. He brings everything in, on target, off target, adjusts well late. I love his release. I'm a sucker for a wide receiver with a good release. Really speedy, accelerates well off the snap. Nice catch and turn acceleration as well. He turns upfield with some really loose hips. I think he's a very fluid player for a guy that came in at 6'3", 187. He separates really consistently. Now he's playing against Big 12 defenders, so maybe we take that down a notch or a little bit of grain of salt. I do think he can struggle to win positioning at times, right? But I think for me, that was a really interesting type of usage for Texas Tech, and I think that played into his positioning. So if you go back, Reggie Virgil the year before was at Bowling Green, right? It was a MAC team. Yeah, Bowling Green. He was used as a downfield threat. He gets to Texas Tech. They've got Caleb Douglas along the boundary, who we will talk about shortly. He's the boundary guy. Virgil's used a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. So I think he did have to develop a different set of routes to be able to win in that way. His overall college career, 15.8 yards per reception, 61% catch rate, 18 touchdowns. I was really excited, John, about the tape that I watched, and I'm forgetting the exact game now. It's going to annoy me. I think it might be Houston, where you see Reggie Virgil, and they only did it in like 1 or 2 games, but they were giving him jet sweeps. They were giving him touches near the goal line. Like in the athleticism, I thought really, really shined through in those situations, right? And so he's not fully manufactured targets or anything, but they could give him a couple and he could have some versatility to his usage. Outside the top 48 in terms of sleeper ADP right now, I really like his exposure, or I really like his profile. I'm going to have a pretty high exposure to him, like probably over 50%. If we're talking late round, dart throws there, I recommend going after Reggie Virgil as a sleeper.
Oh, I'm interested in Reggie Virgil. I just prefer his teammate Caleb Douglas.
Well, there we go.
And I think you and I are really more in agreement on Caleb Douglas, right?
They're pretty close.
25. You had him at wide receiver 27. So Matt and I kind of looking at him, how we looked at him in film, how he looks in the model. We're very similar with our expectations of this young man. He comes from the University of Florida. He moved over to the Red Raiders. And actually it was fun. The Red Raiders are a great football team to watch this year. Even though neither receiver was as good as I expected, but they did run the ball very well at Texas Tech. So that's part of the reason. They also wanted to protect their defense late in games because it was such a good defense and they got ahead early of opponents. So that's kind of why some of their production, you didn't get the 1,100-yard season out of either guy. They were sharing touches and targets, and the Red Raiders were killing people, so they ran the ball in the second half. When you put Caleb Douglas in my model, 15 yards per reception, I like that very much. His ADOT is very comfortable at 13.6. So you have a young man who's running deep routes. They're throwing him the ball deep. His aerial dominator, I understand in context when he's sharing the field with Reggie Virgil. Douglas is 6'3", 206. I think he projects a little bit more as a more classic of an X receiver. I do like he ran a 4.39 in the 40. I think that's very impressive time for his size. Matt, I like either of these two young men. I'll tell you this. I'm going to probably take the Red Raider, who's the least expensive in ADP, and I'll be pretty comfortable with either one. I think I'm going to let ADP tell me which one of these two young men in all my drafts that I'll take.
Yeah, and it almost goes without saying, but important to point out, right? Like the ADP will settle and swing pretty widely based on landing spot.
Yes.
And it'll be volume, opportunity. And don't worry, folks, we are definitely going to be back breaking down some of these landing spots and talking about how value will change post-draft for sure. But talk about a difference in rankings here. Cyrus Allen out of Cincinnati. I love Cyrus Allen. I've got him at wide receiver 14. John's got him at Squints, wide receiver 40. 40.
I'm sorry, my friend.
It's all right. It's all right, John. I need you and folks who agree with you to drive down the ADP. That's all. He's wicked twitchy. Love his athleticism. Quick mover. Another guy, I honestly, I flipped on the tape because he got the Senior Bowl invite, right? Like that's what we do. And there's a reason because NFL teams are paying attention to these guys. And I was so pleasantly surprised, really nice hands, really, really good in traffic. I love his ability to get in and through tight coverage, explosive through his cuts, helps him separate, good mental concentration. I do think he's a bit one note in terms of like, he's not winning after the catch rate. He's going to do most of his damage before the catch, but I'd much rather have a guy who only wins before the catch than a guy who only wins after the catch.
I agree.
Yeah, 16 yards per reception for the Bearcats, 70% catch rate, 22 touchdowns career. He transferred over. He was initially at Texas A&M, I believe. So he's got that kind of higher recruiting pedigree. Wasn't able to break through. Most people aren't wide receiver wise in the Texas A&M offense. So another guy, He's going outside the top 48. I do think he could get into the top 48 ADP post-draft because, again, this is a guy I do think I'm a bit higher on consensus now, and I think I will remain above consensus, but I do think this is a guy more folks are going to be talking about post-draft. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets round 4 NFL draft capital. He also could be like round 6, right? But I think he might go a little bit higher than narrative is suggesting right now.
You know, Matt, I'm very open-minded to Cyrus Allen because when you rank him that much higher than me, I have to be. I've been with you enough. I know you have a difference of opinion, but I have to respect it. I'd be crazy not to. I will say Cyrus Allen will depend on draft capital where my final ranking is on him. Now, another player that we have, I think we have a little bit of difference on this young man also, right? Chase Roberts out of BYU. Yeah, Matt has him at 22. I have him at 36. You know, I really wanted to like Chase Roberts. Let me just say that. I've always liked the Cougars, and that goes all the way back to the Jim McMahon era, the Robbie Bosco national champion. There was something about BYU slinging the football all around the field. We love Puka Nacua coming out of BYU.
Sure did.
So I go into the process in December really wanting to like him. And then when I broke it down and I look at him, I just felt like he leaves too much on the field. Like, I feel like he could be better, Matt. But yeah. Parker Kingston was outplaying him. Now, I know they had quarterback change. They had a freshman quarterback, so that might be some of the context. Parker Kingston just played really well, even though now he's had some off-the-field problems. That's a different story for a different day. But I just left the tape saying to myself, man, he's kind of too much untapped, and I'm not sure it's because of the offensive structure. If it's the way he was playing, the coaching staff didn't believe in him. So I have a lot of questions, but I will say this. My model kind of likes him. 15.2 yards per catch is impressive. 13.8 ADOT is nice. But then he went to the combine. Straight line speed a little bit concerns me, 4.64. That's not everything. And I will say his 3-cone drill and his 20-yard shuttle, while they don't hit my benchmarks, they're better than the straight line speed. So he does have some quick separation and he does have utility. But Matt, what do you like so much about Chase Roberts?
He was the last wide receiver I watched right before putting together the end of the rookie guide. And, you know, the rookie guide has 87 players, anybody who I thought would get drafted, right? So I've watched all these guys and I just kept adding one more. And I stopped with Chase Roberts because I loved what I saw. You know, he was wide receiver 40-something for me that I watched. But I saw a guy, he gets off the line very well. I love his first step. I love his redirection ability. That for me really jumps out. You mentioned it. He's not the speediest guy, but he redirects well. I think he does a lot in short space. He's got good hands. I saw him win really consistently in traffic, which is something I really appreciate as well. So a sneaky guy here, really curious to see, you know, where his ADP lands. And I just don't think he's getting enough hype. So I wanted to make sure we snuck him into the sleeper show here. Another guy here who's getting zero hype. I don't know, man. I like him. I like it. And I know why you wouldn't like him, John. There's zero chance he hits any of your markers for the analytics side. I mean, it's just
analytics.
It's absolutely not going to happen. But I watched Vinny Anthony tape out of Wisconsin, and this wide receiver, man, I'm telling you, folks, he's got some juice. I think he is an excellent boundary threat. He's aggressive. He's fast in a straight line along the boundary. I know, you know, maybe not the best, you know, Indianapolis straight line speed, but I'm telling you, I watched him. He consistently outpaced Big Ten defensive backs. Excellent mental concentration, physical, wins positioning consistently. You've seen me complain, or not guys, I should say, that haven't won positioning. Anthony battles, man. He wins positioning. Not a lot of targets, not a lot of production. Some really, really poor quarterback play at Wisconsin. It makes sense he was buried. Yeah, but I'm telling you, folks, like I watched the snow game against Minnesota watching his tape, and he got the most out of every single target. I do think NFL teams, NFL evaluators are going to appreciate that. I think 14.5 yards per reception at Wisconsin, man, that's like 19 yards per reception at any other program. I think there's a lot here. He's probably one note. You probably do have to stick him along the boundary, right? There's a little bit of limitation there, but I think he goes round 5. I'm sticking with it. I think from what I see on tape, I think it's something NFL evaluators are going to appreciate. So I get it. I understand, but I do like him a lot.
Hey, athletically, he does pop. So the analytics side, the production side, you're absolutely correct, Matt. But he did run a 4.07 20-yard shuttle, and he ran a 6.86 3-cone drill. So I agree with you. But when I think about him, like I try to say after watching the tape, what does an NFL coach want to do or staff wants to do with him? I think he's a special teams guy, Matt. I think that's just, and I think so. Maybe he's your 5th or 6th receiver. We'll see. Hey, if he gets in the 6th round, then I'll reevaluate. And our last guy, I believe this is our last guy on the board, right, Matt?
Yep.
Malik Benson out of Oregon. And Matt and I are pretty similar on here. Matt has him at 26. I have him at 30. And, I guess part of it is I've seen so many of these Ducks receivers, right? And you watch them. They don't usually transition as well to the NFL. And I totally thought when I'm watching Malik Benson, I kept saying to myself, I think he could be really special. And he ran a 4.37 in the 40-yard dash at the combine. And I do believe there are Malik Benson truthers out there. Every once in a while on X, you'll see someone talking about Malik Benson. I get it. I do think the athleticism is there. I understand why someone had watched the Oregon Ducks. They see that offense, and you can see glimpses of Malik Benson using that athletic ability. But when I put him in the model, Matt, my model says, he's kind of average, nothing spectacular. 14.7 yards per reception might be his most impressive model number, but then aerial dominator, only 19%. 1.64 receiving yards per team pass attempt. And I was, so I'm looking at him, I'm saying, yeah, I could see an NFL team really like the speed and they can fall for the athleticism, but he's 6 feet, 189. I think he seems thin, right, Matt?
Yeah.
I don't picture him as a big, strong guy who can absorb a lot of punishment or maybe beat press coverage. I have questions about that. But why do you like Malik Benson?
Yeah, I think he's a deep field stretcher, right?
Yeah.
I think his probably high-end outcome is like highest end outcome would be like Hollywood Brown, but probably more like a Tyquan Thornton, right? Like I think he's got a role on an NFL team. He could stretch the field. He's super athletic. You could find him in a role where he gets 4 or 5 touchdowns in a season.
Yeah.
And if you go back actually, John, and you look at it, like he's a high 4-star pedigree, right? I believe his recruiting, he's been at Alabama, he's been at Florida State, Oregon. He's made an impact on all those rosters. It's just never been a high volume impact, but he's always had the flashes. He's always had the upside. In total, John, we had 14 wide receivers on this episode. I went and I added it up. We covered 29 wide receivers, either a full rookie profile or what we're calling mini rookie profiles here, labeled under our wide receiver sleepers episode. If you have questions on any other wide receiver, there are some honorable mentions, Ty Montgomery, Aaron Anderson. We didn't hit Brennan Thompson, Louis Bond. There are some other players, that we like. DeJon Stribling, right? Like we had to cut it off somewhere here, folks, but we're happy to answer those questions. And most importantly, you can go on and see they've got full pages, full breakdowns in the rookie guide. All of those players, over 100 pages. Volume 1's already out. Volume 2 drops the Monday after the NFL draft. Every single rookie that we've covered and every single rookie in general will have a full seasonal projection available within an hour of being drafted during NFL draft weekend. We're going to get you ready to win your rookie drafts, folks. You can join our Discord, get some personalized advice for when you're on the clock, when you're making trades, rebuilding those rosters. Lots of good stuff available for as low as $5 a month. We're running a promo now through April. You could save 25% if you sign up in April. The link's in the episode description. No better time, folks. No better time to get ahead of your league mates, win your rookie drafts. John, we're going to be back real soon here. We're going to do another sleepers breakdown. We're going to, because we just need more. We need to break down more of these prospects in the 2026 rookie class.